Hey guys, it's Joe with Modern Survival Sense. In this video I wish to discuss an important survival topic, fire, or more importantly, the method you use to ignite those fires, your source of ignition. Before you are 6 different ways of lighting fires. You have 2 different types of matches, 2 different types of ferro rods, and 2 different lighters. When putting together your system or your fire building system, it's very important to design it in such a way that there's no room for failure. Now, what I mean by that is not that any individual item has to be the absolute best on the market or have to cost an exorbitant amount. What I mean by that is if one item that you have in your system fails, you have something to back that up. Or in another term, redundancy. Redundancy is a very important aspect to any successful system. And in this system, our fire starting system, it's very important to have more than one type of ignition source. In my personal fire kit, I will have at least 3 different types of ignition sources to start my fires. Typically, I will have a type of match, a ferro rod of some sort, and a lighter. And usually I'll actually have 2 different lighters because I prefer some over others, and I'll explain that in a minute. Now on the right hand side you have 2 different types of matches. You may think that all matches are created equal, but they are not. These are your everyday run-of-the-mill matches. They are basically cardboard with an ignition source on the top. However, these are not waterproof, they will not last in the wind, and they die very, very quickly. If you were to get matches similar to this, if I could grab them, these are UCO waterproof matches. They can withstand being wet, they can withstand the weather, and they will last. Or they will last a long time in regards to matches. Now the problem with matches is they have a very finite life. And what I mean by that is you can only carry so many of them, and they go very, very quickly. Whereas this pack may be relative size to some of the other items on the table. You notice there are only 7 matches there. Now of course that's because I've used a few, but the point remains that you can only carry so many of them, and they are used up very quickly. So in regards to my fire kit, matches like this, or I would never carry those, but weatherproof matches like this are an absolute last resort. However, these do work very well. Now moving on. Next on the table are your ferrocerium rods or ferro rods. These are very popular in the outdoor community, and they're a favorite of mine as well. They give me, a sense of making a primitive fire, even though they're not overly primitive. Basically, their function is you take a hard-edged scraper along this metal, and it throws sparks, and those sparks can be used to light your emergency tinder or other sources of tinder that you may have found. Now, they do work very similarly. However, there are different types of ferro rods out there. This is a light my fire ferro, or fire steel as they call it, and this one is of unknown manufacturer. The difference between the two, this being a harder type material, this will make a spark very, very easily, but the spark will be generally smaller. You have to use less pressure to create it, but the amount of sparks will be a lot smaller than, say, this one here. This one is what they refer to as mish metal. It is a lot softer, and obviously the bar will be used a lot quicker than, say, the light my fire one. Basically, to use this one, you have to apply more force and scraping it off, and what happens is it will actually throw sparks. And by throw sparks, I mean we're talking several feet or more. And they are very hot sparks as well. The downside to this one over this one is the life of the ferro rod. Whereas this one is really easy to use. It will actually last a long time, and this is the very first ferro rod that I have purchased for myself. And I still use it for tests and playing around and stuff like that. I do have other fire steels that I use on a regular basis, and other ones besides ones on this table. This one will produce a lot more sparks than this one will. So, in my opinion, this is what I like to go for. Do I not like the Light My Fire one? Oh no. I actually have 3 different Light My fire steels. And 2 other ones besides this one are in rotation of my fire kits. So, these are very good tools. They throw off sparks that are in the thousands of degrees, and they will last a relative long time. The only downside on ferro rods is the tinder that you are having to light has to catch the spark just right. Jute twine and other very fibrous materials that light very easily will catch a spark very easily. Cotton balls, like I said, cotton balls, jute twine, fat wood will also. You just have to make the shavings really thin. That is the only downside to those. So when making your fire kit, you want to include emergency tinders that will accept sparks from a ferro rod. That is, if you want that in your kit. And lastly on the table we have our traditional lighters, and they provide a very reliable source of ignition for fires. Now, I do always have at least one lighter in all of my kits, even if I may not use it, because I do prefer to use the fire steels. However, this is obviously the easiest way to start a fire out of all of these methods. Now, I'm not saying this over this one, but I'm saying lighters in general. Now on this Bic, obviously I've chosen a very bright color. That way, if I'm in the dark or if I'm trying to look for it, it's very visible. You don't want to lose your fire making capacity. Now, the funny part is, normally I carry both. Why do I carry both? Because if I want to use a lighter for any type of task, I kind of gravitate towards this one. The reason for that is kind of a nicety type thing. This is my favorite lighter. I have had Zippos, and they're great. I had a favorite Zippo for a long time. However, this is cool. This is a Ronson, and it's a butane lighter, so it is refillable. And what's great about this is it's very easy. Push button, and it creates a very hot flame. This catches things on fire very quickly. That's not to say that I start my fires with lighters. However, if I were to choose to, if I need to get a fire going really fast, this is the way to go. This provides a flame that is a lot hotter than the Bic. Well, there you have it. These are traditional ways of starting or igniting your tinder to start a fire. What you are not seeing on this table, you won't see grill lighters. I don't like those. I've had several, and I've had several that fail. Not only that, but they are very big. Another thing you're not going to see on this table is fire pistons. Fire pistons, they are cool. In my opinion, they're kind of gimmicky. Yes, you're using pressure to create the heat in order to create the coal to start the fire. That coal can go out, and if you're out there and you're relying upon this fire piston that has O-rings on it, and those O-rings fail, what are you doing now? Yes, someone may say that you can always carry more O-rings, but now your O-rings are gone and you have to replace them with more. If you're in a cold situation, which I've been in, the last thing you want to be doing is fidgeting with O-rings on a metal pipe in order to be able to start a fire. Therefore, you have these sources: matches, ferro rod, lighters. Fire pistons may work, but they don't work as well as the items on the table. Now, I spoke earlier about redundancy in methods of starting your fires, and that is very important. Redundancy is key to having a successful system, regardless of what the system is, whether it's building fires or preparing for disasters. I'm not talking about, if the crap hits the fan or anything like that. I'm just talking about everyday things that you have to deal with, weather systems, whatnot. And in this system, your system for building a fire, you want to have more than one way to do so. In my mind, I like to have a minimum of two solid methods of igniting a fire with a third option available. And that third option is always going to be matches. Weatherproof, waterproof matches. I keep them in a sealed waterproof container and they stay inside of a somewhat sealed baggie. They should never get wet, and if they do, they may be just fine. But I don't rely on those. Those are my last ditch effort. I will always have a ferro rod and I will always have a lighter. And that is the way I build my fire kits. I will have a minimum of 3, sometimes 4 methods of igniting a fire. Like I said, I will normally carry both just because I like that. There's nothing wrong with that. The more the merrier, right? Alright, well that is the introduction to ignition sources for building your fires. Do you have any comments or questions, any suggestions? Feel free to share them in the comments section below. If you liked my video, if you wouldn't mind, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. I'd be most appreciative. And until next time, I'm Joe. See ya.